In a new court filing, the Justice Department is looking to unseal grand jury exhibits and transcripts related to the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell cases with redactions. At the same time, the administration is still in serious damage control over this case. This week, the Attorney General and FBI Director, who have not been on the same page, reportedly met at the White House to discuss a range of topics, including Epstein. Who was absent from the meeting? Epstein's victims. And many are worrying that their voices are not being heard. Today, an advocacy group sued the Justice Department and the FBI to force the administration to release records on their handling of the investigation. The nightcap is still here. Alex, I'm guessing the administration is not going to care, but a lot of attention on the unsealing of the grand jury testimony on this case is everywhere. But officials have already said that most of what is in this transcript is already publicly known. Are people expecting too much from what they're going to get out of this thing?
Yes. They're not going to get much of any. I mean, that's the whole point here. First of all, it's not even primary testimony. It's secondary testimony, it sounds like, from two law enforcement officials who testified in front of the grand jury. Most of it is in the public record, something the DOJ itself admits. The DOJ is sitting on a treasure trove of information that it could release, but it's not going to, Steph, because the entire point of this, it is all a red herring. It is feed them enough crumbs that they get sated enough that they'll stop asking about Jeffrey Epstein. I do not think that's going to solve Trump's problem. I mean, in part because people want more information, and if they don't get it, they're going to keep wanting it. And secondarily, because the quid pro quo with Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now at, effectively an arts and crafts studio where you can train dogs in your free time instead of actual maximum security prison, her treatment under the Trump Justice Department is so clearly a violation of what is right in the criminal justice system. And I think that that's obvious for anybody to see, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a MAGA supporter. I mean, the handling of this has been so extraordinarily corrupt. And not just the DOJ, but also the House of Representatives. I said this before, and I will say this again, quoting the great Dan Pfeiffer, this is a scandal that touches many parts of the federal government, the justice system, the House of Representatives. We need to stop thinking of this as just Trump's CYA strategy on, his relationship with America's most notorious child sex trafficker. We need to think of this as a cover-up that has involved multiple branches of government and is very much on the scale of Iran-Contra and Watergate. These branches are acting in service of covering up what bad behavior at best, criminal behavior at worst on the part of the President of the United States. That is very, very, very big, and that is why this story is not going away and should not be going away.
It also touches some of the most powerful people across the political spectrum and the business world and feeds exactly into how the MAGA base was born, feeling like there was a two-tier justice system. Now, Mark, the Justice Department is considering releasing this audio of the meeting between Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. But even if they do, why would we believe it? Right? Let's say the audio is from 10 minutes of their speaking. Maybe they spoke for 6 hours. What do we know?
That's obviously correct. The audio could also be doctored, not to sound conspiratorial, but there's certainly been a whiff of conspiracy about this whole thing. And the excerpts that are released to the public, if they are released, are likely to be the most exonerating excerpts that we heard in the entire exchange. There's a lot that we're not going to hear that could be damning. And, beyond that, we all know that Ghislaine Maxwell had every incentive to say what Donald Trump and his administration want to hear. It is very, very clear at this stage that in exchange for her speaking to Todd Blanche, she was moved to a very, very low security prison, essentially an arts and crafts camp, as Alex says, that she would not normally qualify for. I mean, the government had to essentially break its own rules in order to move this woman to the lowest security prison where she would get the best kind of treatment. And, I'm sure she recognized that if she wanted this gift from the government, she needed to give them something in exchange. So this is not trustworthy testimony. Even if there's nothing particularly interesting in it, we need to recognize that she has every motivation to say what she thinks Trump wants to hear, and that if she did say something Trump wants to hear, that's not going to get released to the American public.
Jillian, how worried should we be about that? Right? Maxwell, a convicted sex trafficker, gets transferred to a minimum security prison camp, and nobody has given us even a shred of an explanation why that happened?
Well, what is amazing about the whole Epstein story is that 6 months ago, it was a riddle wrapped in a conundrum, wrapped in a mystery, or whatever that tagline is. And nothing really made sense about it. We still don't know how a school teacher ended up being worth these billions, why powerful people in Manhattan and elsewhere were paying him all this money. There is so much we just don't know yet. And what's really fascinating is that actually we're now in a position where there are even more mysteries than there were before. So there's even more question marks and even more uncertainty. And that's astonishing, because normally the whole point about investigation is to get answers and to clear up some of the mysteries. Instead, we're just left, as shown by this discussion, with even more questions.
David, do you know who can answer a lot of these important questions? Alex Acosta, the former U.S. attorney in Florida who approved the so-called sweetheart deal to not prosecute Epstein 20 years ago. The House Oversight Committee issued subpoenas to a multitude of top former DOJ officials and the Clintons, but not Acosta. Why not?
Because there's a cover-up in place. I mean, clearly. That doesn't mean that the president himself should be adjudicated as guilty of a crime, but clearly we know from reporting that Pam Bondi apparently has acknowledged to Donald Trump that he is in the files. We know through a lot of photos and other information that Donald Trump had a strong relationship. We know Donald Trump's really egregious, disgusting comments about Jeffrey Epstein liking young women. And this is a political issue, notwithstanding a criminal issue, that is so easily understandable. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell, on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein and whomever else was involved, recruited young women to be raped. And there's a question about who was involved in the sexual offenses against these young women. And we know that Donald Trump's name is at least somewhere in this universe, again, not knowing whether or not he would be guilty of a crime or not. And now Donald Trump himself as president is essentially in charge of the files. And Alex is exactly right. This notion of the grand jury testimony is a complete distraction and a grade school tactic of the Department of Justice. First of all, I don't think the grand jury testimony should be released. It is private for a reason. But there are boxes and boxes and boxes of evidence and other information that if Donald Trump's administration, a president who now controls his own Department of Justice in a way that few presidents ever have, even including Richard Nixon, they could release information about this case, but they are not, because there's a cover-up in place. And the reason that the suspicions are so great is because Donald Trump's words and behaviors himself, and because of Pam Bondi's words herself. And so Donald Trump's base is the one that is holding him accountable. Look, this is just delay, delay, delay as long as the White House can, but it stinks, and people know it stinks, and it is a very understandable, grievous crime at the heart of this. That's why this is full scandal mode, and it's a full cover-up mode by this White House.